Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday and it's draft day. And this is always a day that is always exciting for all of us. Usually we're in some, nice locality like Vancouver. We were a couple years ago, and this is the second straight remote draft and hopefully the last. We all hope to be in Montreal next June for the draft. I already have my itinerary of local eateries, Kevin, that we're going to go to. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
And I'm going to keep it to draft. I've got about 11 pages of my own draft stuff to sort through today for different shows and different things. But I started covering it in 01. And the interesting thing about how the draft has grown from 01 to now is just unbelievable. I have great memories of being in front of, in 01, Dan Blackburn, and there was maybe 4 or 5 reporters. The first Stephen Weiss, because he was the local guy in Florida, maybe he had 10 reporters. It wasn't that big of a deal as far as coverage on site. It wasn't that great. And I have a picture that I use as my Twitter avatar. I ran into Pascal Leclerc. I took a picture with him. I did an actual live stream from the draft, and we did a draft show, and I probably had 2 pages of draft notes. So from 01 to now, I go from 2 pages to 11 pages because I know a lot more. Back then, I was just getting into it. I just met Shane Malloy for the first time in 01, and we've been friends ever since. It's just funny. It hooked me right from the beginning. I always had sort of liked the draft idea from all sports. And, being a Jet fan, I was tortured by the draft most of my adult life with that team. But it's just, it's one of these days that it's just one of the best days of the year for me. I get that some people don't care. They tune in for their team. They just want to know that pick. That's fine. But I've really gotten into all of the bells and whistles of the draft. I actually wrote a series of draft stories that's on Kindle. It's called Kindle Vella. And you can get it on the iOS app or on Amazon.com. And I have 4 stories up there right now. Yeah, one of them is Pete Weber, who comes on the show. Pete gave me a great story after the show one day about the Kings. But the point is that I really have dug into the draft on a lot of different levels. And lately, while I do like watching games and going to games live and getting that stuff, I also dig into the personal side a lot of the draftees too, so I get an idea of where they're at, and that kind of helps me with my list. So,
Russ, Kev, I've been to 6 drafts in person. One as a fan, which was the Lindros draft in Buffalo in 91 or 92.
92 sounds about
92. And then 5 as a reporter for Hockey Buzz. And the funny thing is it wasn't a bad experience. It wasn't a terrible experience, but the one that I had the least amount of fun at was the one in Buffalo, because normally I travel to the draft and it's like I go to Vancouver and I'm trying different places. In Buffalo, it's like, I'm going to 716 where I've been to 1,000 times, and I'm going to the KeyBank Center where I've been to hundreds of games. So
I had the least amount of fun in Buffalo because my car got robbed, and my laptop was stolen. Half of my equipment, I had to go into a store in Toronto and buy equipment so I could do a live show that day.
Yeah.
Well, I was doing a show on site that day that I had to tape, and I had to buy new equipment. And Rick, I had a splint on my finger from softball. I had not broken my finger, but really hurt it.
Jesus, Ross.
And so I was able to drive and stuff. It was fine. But then I get done doing an interview with Rick Vive, and I'm a righty, and I knew he was a righty, and I gave him my left hand to shake. And he shook me with my right hand with the splint. And this guy is a big guy. Like Rick, he's a strong guy even to this day. And he just killed my hand. It just
to answer Funky's question, no, the draft party was not at the Anchor Bar. And yes, the wings are murder.
I do. The draft is a fun thing to travel to for sure. I miss it. Although I talked to somebody today I talked to a guy today who's like, from the GM's perspective, it's much better to do it remotely.
Yeah, sure, but
I mean, they love it. They love it. They love the concept of not having people like, not having TSN saying, "Oh, we see someone so and so talking to so and so at the standing next to the other at the table."
Brian Burke is talking to
right,
Brian
all that crap.
Yeah, but you know what? I think that suffers because
Yeah.
they're not doing as many Zoom calls today as they would walking up to each other on the draft floor
yeah.
before the draft, after the draft the first day, before the draft starts the second day. They're not doing as many Zoom calls as they would just flybys.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's fun, Kevin. It's always fun. It's always fun to catch up with people. Like Kevin and I would always catch up at the draft. It's fun. People you don't see all the time,
Oh,
well, I'll just one
Right.
quick thing. The worst weather, and Russ has remarked about this before. The worst weather in terms of, I'm not the biggest hot weather fan, and with the draft in Dallas in 2018, when we walked out of the building to the I think it was to the media bus.
Yeah.
It was 11 o'clock at night. It was 100 degrees. It was air conditioned inside the building. I walked out and my glasses immediately fogged up, and I was like a blind man. It was just that made Chicago feel cool and comfortable, Russ. Because
that was the hottest that there ever was for a draft. There's no question. And when we walked around town for a few minutes, we went to walk to a 7-Eleven, and I thought Mike was going to die. He was like Frosty the Snowman on a bad day. And it's just, but the minute we got in 7-Eleven, he was like saved. It was like, we almost lost Mike on the walk, though.
I got the super big gulp with as much ice as I possibly could, and it melted within 5 minutes. But
there you go. All right, let's get going here.
Let's get going.
All right, it's the date. Come on, the date is the 22nd.
23rd.
23rd. The dates. What is this calendar thing we're talking about? Hello, Hockey World. It's Friday, July 23rd. That's the day the NHL draft is. 2021.
I'm Mike Agello, and I'm melting.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Eichel, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings, goings in the hockey world. And we start today with a question. Would you do this? Because I talked to a couple people today, and there has been some rumor out. There's a rumor out there, and whether or not, Kevin and I were just debating this on the phone, whether or not, this is going to happen, going to go down. I have no idea, but the rumor out there is that Seattle has had discussions with Buffalo about the number 2 pick for Eichel, and Buffalo, of course, wants more than just the 2nd pick overall for Eichel if they make that happen. And the thought was, all that Seattle really has to offer, if it would be next year's number 1 pick as well. Would you do it?
Nope. And Ron Francis won't do it either.
No, not a chance.
Not a zero chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
It would be complete idiocy for one of a number of reasons. One, you're giving up guaranteed the number 2 pick this year, and more than likely you're giving up the number 2 or 3 pick next year, because even with Eichel, because I mean the team, as good as they did in the expansion draft, they have a lot of holes, and they're not going to be a very good team to start off with. So let's
do one thing before we say absolutely no. Let's just make one assumption here. Let's assume for a second that we know Eichel is healthy. Right now, that we don't know that for sure, of course, but let's just assume
that's a big assumption. But okay,
it's a big assumption, and I get granted. Like as of right now with Eichel's health, there's no way you would do this. Okay, but let's assume Eichel is Eichel, and he comes back and he. We know the surgery is successful. He's out there firing away 102 mile an hour slap shots. He looks great. He's skating like the wind. Now, so they've already made their pick. They've already taken Eklund or Bernier or whoever they've taken, right?
Owen Power, number 1.
The second pick overall. They have that guy.
Right.
Now you're sitting there a month from now with Eichel passing all medical exams. Mm-hmm. Do you give up that pick you just took at number 2 plus next year's first round pick?
No.
To get a perfectly healthy 100% Eichel.
No, I'll tell you why. No, because next year that 2nd overall pick could be better than Jack Eichel.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether he will or won't. Here's the way I would look at it. The problem you run into is, we didn't really quite exactly know what Ron Francis' strategy, but now that we've seen his expansion draft, what we know is, and I've talked to another general manager about this who said Ron told him, when he had tried to give him long-term contracts. I don't really want any long-term contracts. I want to have a big pile of money. I mean, he didn't phrase it like this, but the impression I got, a large pile of cap space next season after we, go through this first season, and then I'll have a second pick, and then, we'll kind of go from there. Like, he didn't set himself up in this draft, other than with a real sound defense, to be all that competitive. Like, he's short on. Right. He could have gotten some named players who could have helped his offense, but he chose not to do that. So for him now to go back and say, "Just kidding, I really am going to try to be competitive here."
Kevin, I mean,
and I'm going to give up my draft pick, and I'm going to shift it, bring Eichel in.
And he'll have $33 million in cap space next year. After and more than likely they're going to end up trading Giordano and the UFAs that they have at the deadline. They'll get value out of them to play this year. But if Francis follows the suit of most general managers, he'll trade his rentals at the deadline for a premium. They'll have a ton of money. They'll be the leader for any good unrestricted free agent. And
that's not 100% true. I mean, listen. I mean, the bottom line is here. I mean, I know they don't want to give up long contracts, Kevin. And of course, they don't want to go that way. And of course, they've shown that way. But don't you think that those rules, those general rules that GMs throw out there, like our strategy is this, our strategy is that, kind of go out the door when a top 5 player is thrown on your lap?
No. There are question marks, Zach. There are lots.
I'm taking away the question marks.
Wait. I know,
I'm with you. Right now, question marks, forget it. No way.
Right.
I'm talking a month from now when Eichel has passed everything and looks great and everybody's really happy with him.
Yeah. All right, I'll give you the biggest reason, Zach. Cash is king, and for the flat cap for the next few years, Ron Francis will have the most cap space, and he will be the most powerful GM as a result, because everybody's going to be looking for cap space.
It wasn't a mistake, Ack, that they only selected 9 players in the expansion draft that had a contract.
And I agree, Mike, 100%. Like there was no one available to them that was a top 10 NHL player, though. We're talking about if Eichel is healthy, in my opinion, as a forward, he's at least top 10. If he's 100% healthy, he's a challenge. He could challenge for the scoring title someday somewhere. I mean, if he's 100% healthy.
Yeah, but it makes sense for Minnesota to do that,
right?
New York Rangers. Right. I mean, they've got assets that they're going to surround him with. So you're taking that elite player and throwing him into a patchwork quilt,
right?
So you're going to have one square made out of gold,
right,
and the rest of it is going to be denim. It just doesn't make sense.
Which is Canadian gold, Kevin. We just want to point that out. That's Canadian gold. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, let me ask Kevin this. I mean, I think that it's reasonable to say, and things can change, and obviously with Vegas getting to the Stanley Cup final, nothing is for certain. But I would say it's a reasonable assumption that Seattle would be a playoff contender within 5 years. Let's just say that there's a 5-year window there, but starting the expansion to building up prospects in their organization, making trades, making free agent signings, that within 5 years, if they're run well, and we think Ron Francis runs a pretty good franchise based on what he's done in Carolina, that within 5 years, they'll be a reasonable playoff contender. You take that, you extrapolate that onto Eichel. He's got 5 years left in his contract. By the time you're a playoff contender, he's an unrestricted free agent. It's a waste of Eichel at 25 to go to an expansion team. He has to go to a team that is the one piece away from being a Stanley Cup.
No, I disagree, because he is your build around guy. He's not the extra piece. Eichel is not that. Eichel is not your last piece.
No,
Eichel
your build around guy is the guy you pick this year with the second pick, or the guy you pick next year with the first or second pick. That's your build around guy.
But the guy you're picking this year with the second pick, as we know, is not close to Eichel, probably.
And I'll give you one further thing, and I think everybody who has covered Eichel knows this, and I think it's pretty common knowledge. The reason he wants out of Buffalo more than anything is that he's tired of losing. You think he's going to go to an expansion team where all he's going to do the first 3 years is lose? He wants to go to a team.
First of all, he has no choice in the matter. Let's throw that out there. Okay, he has a no movement clause. It doesn't have the no movement clause. They can move him wherever they want to. So I'm not disagreeing with you on that he probably doesn't want to go to Seattle, but I'm not saying he doesn't really have a choice in the matter. And also, you become with all that money you have and you're trying to attract free agents, you become a lot more attractive if you've got Eichel on your team. A lot more attractive. It's if this team isn't going to be good right away, which we don't think they are going to be good, it's way harder to get guys to go there without like something like Eichel, where you can say, okay, you've got, it's a different, it changes the game completely. Plus, you have a fan base there who, honestly, most fans would rather have a guaranteed superstar now than wait 3 years for any prospect.
This is the same argument that you were making for Carey Price. The only difference is Carey Price.
No.
9 years old.
This is totally different because Price is older and beaten up, and no, this is no Price. I'm talking about Price for me was more of a, okay, he can be good on the ice, but he's also great and great centerpiece to sell your team. This is a serious top 10 player here. This is
like putting Wayne Gretzky on the Nashville Predators their first year. Like, why would
the Predators would have done that in a heartbeat?
No, they wouldn't have.
Absolutely, they would have.
Yeah, they would have.
Well, I guess for Gretzky back then, sure, okay.
Yeah, Gretzky's a unique player, but you're talking about this. Eichel's the kind of player you build around, but how do you build around him if you're going to give up your first 2 draft picks?
Right.
And we don't even know whether Buffalo would do that.
We don't know if Buffalo would do that. I mean, but I'm saying, would make the question here is, would Seattle do it? And that to me is like, would Buffalo do it? Buffalo, if I'm Buffalo, I'm also trying to get like Vanacek or something out of the deal too. I'm trying to get one of these goalies, like that, to make this offer more enticing for Buffalo. But
I mean, if you compare that to what the rumored packages are from teams like Minnesota and Anaheim, and the thing I heard about Minnesota was, Rossi and Boldy and a number 1 and maybe something else on top of it, which is, that's two really good prospects and a first round pick, or Anaheim with Trevor Zegras and the 3rd overall pick, which I don't think is going to happen. But those packages compared to what Seattle is offering them, nothing other than futures. And I do think that the Sabres want something that can step into their lineup this year. And
I think that's true.
Yeah,
I think that is a really good point. I agree with that 100%. And I think the Sabres, they didn't go out there and get somebody that the Sabres would really be super attracted to, except for maybe like a Vanacek or something like that.
I don't like who would Eichel even play with this year. Like,
obviously, we can't assume Francis is done. Like, there's definitely stuff that's coming. Francis is going to make some moves here. He's got to. I mean, this is not the offense he's going with. I still think that he does have tons of space coming into free agency. There are going to be players.
Hold on to space too. I think he will get a free agent or 2.
Yeah, I do too. I don't. Yeah,
but he'll
trade a player or 2
scoring, or else he's worse than the Arizona Coyotes.
I think he's loading up back. I think he's looking for a specific kind of guy in their 20s, mid to early 20, like 25, 26. Get him on a 3, 4, 5 year deal. Nothing, probably not even 5 years. Probably just a 3-year deal to get him through the start of his franchise. He's not looking for anything big.
I think that there's a greater likelihood of the previous expansion team, meaning Vegas, getting Eichel than the current expansion, the most recent expansion team. And believe me, Kelly McCrimmon is going to have to jump through a lot of hoops.
Yeah. I mean, we'll put the hypothetical away for a second, and now let's talk about the actual Eichel rumors that are out there. Okay, that's hypothetical. The only rumor I have is that they're willing to give up that second overall pick. But again, I think in order to make it happen, that's why I throw in next year's first round pick, because I can't see any other way of that making that happen, right? So, but the actual rumors that are out there with what the Rangers have, with what. The Rangers will put Vegas in there. We'll put Minnesota in there. Those teams, and Anaheim. Okay, the big teams. I think those are the big Eichel teams right now. I don't think any of them are real, because I think those are coming from Buffalo to try to drive the price up. Right now, from what I'm hearing, Buffalo's getting no traction on this whatsoever. Like until they get Eichel's health going, until they figure that out. No one's willing to give the kind of price they're talking about.
Because people are hoping to wait Kevin Adams out, and I think this is a staring contest. I mean, you saw the Larry Brooks tweet this morning, saying the Sabres offers are fantastical. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, you're talking about somebody who just said is a top 10 player in the league. If it's a top 10 player in the league, then you're gonna have to pay top 10.
If he was 100% healthy, Mike, yes, but right now he's not. Until we know what he is, he's not, right? So now teams are going to sit back and say, no, one person said damaged goods to me, and this is a team that really wants him.
That's why I think there is a better than 50% chance that Jack Eichel will start the season with the Sabres and have to play a significant block of games and prove that he's healthy before the Sabres are able to trade him. Because if that question is out there, then they're not going to get full value, and I don't think they're going to trade him unless they get full value.
Right, I agree. Now, Kevin, how do you see this thing playing out with Eichel? What's your opinion?
Well,
on this?
I think it's possible he will have to come to training camp, but I think once he gets to training camp and he starts to, like, if he plays an exhibition game, then it'll get real.
Yeah.
Like, I think they'll definitely try not to, allow him to play a game just because of the optics of it all.
Yeah.
There. We're going to trade him. And then there's the danger of him getting injured again.
Right? Yep.
So I think they'll try to avoid that. But I know what Mike is saying because there is some concern about worry that, especially given the, was he going to have surgery? Can it be rehabbed? And, that particular injury, how many guys have tried to rehab it and then after 2 months of rehab said, well, I'm going to have the surgery because it just doesn't. Right. So, I mean, it does happen quite a lot. So I think it will get done. I do think they'll have to back off a little bit. But, I think you're still going to have to give up a lot to get.
Yeah, they're asking for 4 pieces. Maybe they'll have to accept 3.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and 4 first-round equivalents. That's the toughest part of it. The GMs that I've talked to said, I mean, you guys don't have to go in the first round, but you got to be someone that you think is a first round. And they base that, and their logic on that is if you signed him, to an offer sheet, that's what they would get in return.
Yeah.
So
I mean, so let's. There's 2 different dominoes. You like to talk about the dominoes that are falling with trades and things like that. But I think But before we get into that, let's get into the draft a little bit more with Russ, okay? Because I want to talk draft to start with, and before we get into the dominoes of the rumors and stuff like that, Russ, I was talking to somebody about New Jersey's pick in the 4th overall, and this seems like one of the more interesting ones, I think, because of where it lays and because of the possibility of
Luke Hughes.
Right, the last Hughes brother being possibly there, and maybe Eklund being there too. So, which way do you think New Jersey goes? Who would you go with if you were them?
I would go with Luke Hughes now that I believe he's fully healthy and not worried about his speed. But the Devils camp, from what I heard, is kind of torn between either the Hugheses or the Clarks, because Brant Clark is a hell of a defenseman too.
Right.
I don't think Eklund will be there, so I don't think I'll have that to worry about. So I think it's going to be between one of 2 brother combinations. And I would like to say they should just take Luke Hughes based on the talent. That's what I would do. But we also know the Devils are going to want to market this. Yeah. And even if some of their scouts have Brant Clark ranked higher, they're still going to probably go with Luke Hughes because of the marketing. And that's where, that's what's probably going to happen at their table today. But Luke Hughes is really good. He's fast. His decision-making is good, although he can get trapped once in a while in the offensive zone, and that's something that worries me a little bit. But he, as he has pointed out, he's bigger than his brothers. He kind of made fun of Quinn because he said he can penalty kill, and he's not near what Quinn is on the power play. Like, he's not like that. But he can definitely get his points, and he'll get it a different way, and he's physical. I don't think he's an all-world defenseman like Owen Power. I think Power is a lot better. But I do think he's really good, and I think that's who they're going to take.
Yeah, I mean, Quinn Hughes is definitely better than people were projecting him to be in the draft too, right? I mean, we've turned out.
Well, I mean, it depends what people you talk to.
Yeah, I guess it depends who you talk to, but he went late.
I said he was generational before the draft even started because I got to see him with the U.S. program, and I never seen anybody like him.
Where did you have him rated, Russ?
I don't know. I have to look it up, but
I think from what I remember, Russ, I think you had him like 5 or 6.
I don't think it may not have been that high. It may have been a little lower, but it was.
He went like 9. I think
he went like 9. I actually may have had him like 11 or something like that, but usually it's within 5 spots.
Russ is, now the other thing about that to me, this is kind of interesting, is even though I raised young Eklund to be a great player, he I've heard various things about him, and I want to know the question I have about him is this. Obviously,
he doesn't wear hats well.
He did have issues last year with his size playing with men. There's no question about it, right? He scored I think he had like a 1 goal in the league. I heard something crazy. Like
but he had 11 goals.
Yeah, he played. He was the one guy that played well in Sweden.
Okay,
yeah,
so he
played well.
He fit well with the men.
Right.
Okay.
The previous year he had 2 assists in 20 games.
Okay, so the previous year is having but he did and which is understandable. My gosh, he's so young the previous year. So all right, I take that back. Is the success of Elias Pettersson influencing where Eklund goes?
No, they're completely different players. Like Eklund is a playmaker first. Pettersson's not. Eklund is a guy who forechecks. His dad was a grinder for Djurgården, so that's where he sort of learned how to play that part of the game first. Forechecking, even faceoffs. Like he is a guy that may be able to play center if somebody sees that in him. But he's probably going to be a winger. But so he learned that part of the game first. Pettersson had no part of that game in his game at all when he was drafted, and still probably doesn't.
And the only question about Pettersson when he was being drafted was, we think he's going to be a fantastic center. We just don't know whether he's going to be durable enough and big enough, strong enough to play center. And that with Eklund, I think it's more, from everything I've read, it's more he's got the skill, but it may not translate to being up the middle, that he probably fits better as
I think he probably fits better on the wing too. But again, you never say never with a guy like this talented. But the idea is he does do those other things. Okay. He's very cerebral. He really is very mature for a guy his age. So in the SHL, it's not a surprise that he did so well and translated so well, because he really is a mature guy. And he, like his brother's a few years behind him. And so it just shows how talented his family is for hockey.
Yeah.
And that may not even get translated today at the draft, because they may not know, or they may not bother to talk about it. But he is from a really good hockey family, and there is a lot of talent there. The way he skates, though, is a lot like Pettersson. Like, that's where, if you want to say there's something there, that's where I would say there's something there.
Watching some of his videos yesterday, I did see that. Yeah, you could see the similarities with Pettersson with the same, which is that interesting thing. Go ahead, Kev.
Well, the comparisons for him are, I've heard Sebastian Aho and Henrik Zetterberg. Those are 2 pretty good players.
Yeah.
I don't see Aho in them. I could see where someone would say Zetterberg, because Zetterberg really did do a lot of things on the ice.
Yeah.
It took Aho a little while to kind of do a lot of things on the ice, and so I think Eklund's ahead of Aho in that regard. And listen, Aho's a terrific guy, terrific player, but I do think Eklund at this point right now is ahead of him. So he won't go first overall. He could go second. I don't think he gets past Anaheim. I don't think so. I think that's why I don't think the Devils have a shot at him.
So because the Devils have him there. So the Devils have Eklund and Hughes sitting on the board.
Well, then you take Eklund.
Take Eklund, right? Yeah.
But they're going to take Hughes because they want the marketing. Like that's
Hughes over Clark, you're saying, but not over Eklund.
I think they're going to take Hughes regardless. I think they could show up at the draft when they're on the clock, walk up to the podium, and they're taking Luke Hughes regardless.
Well, even if Eklund's available, you think they take Hughes?
Yep.
Let me ask Kevin this question, because Detroit, they're 6th, they believe, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, 6th. Now, there was a lot of speculation about them taking Wallstedt, the goalie, at 6. Does the Nedeljkovic trade acquisition from yesterday affect that at all?
Yeah, well, the short answer is I don't know. But what I would say is originally I thought that they were seriously thinking about taking the goalie, and now I've moved off of that because I've sort of looked at Steve Yzerman's history and when he talked about it, and the year before when Askarov was available. He was quoted publicly as saying, we need so much that I really felt like, I needed to get the forwards that were available up at the top. I really couldn't consider the goalie. And I think that's still true today.
Yeah.
So I think and then I've subsequently heard, and I say this all the time, but it's so true. Yzerman just doesn't allow information to sneak out. So I'm always leery when I hear some things, but I've heard that they're looking in the 2nd round for a goalie, either Gaudreau or
Benjamin Gaudreau. Yeah, I mean,
or Tristan Lennox. So
and I don't even know Lennox because I don't go past three goalies in this draft. For me, it didn't suit my purposes.
Yeah.
What I could say, Gaudreau is a good goalie. Like, he was good in the under 18s.
Yep.
Is he a great goalie? I don't know. Wallstedt definitely will be a great goalie. And so I think it's like this, Kev. I think because they didn't do it last year and they haven't done it in a while, I have to think there's still some chance that they would go for him if he's there, because, again, you don't get that chance that many times. And when he does start to get good, he's not going to get that chance ever again for the Red Wings.
Well, and then there were other clues this week, too. He talked publicly about the draft, and they asked him the question that GMs always, best available player or position. And GMs always say best available player because you don't know what your team will be like when they're ready to play.
Right.
But Eisner didn't say that. What Eisner said is, well, if you've been, have a bunch of players at one position, which Detroit now has at defense, they have 6 or 7 guys that they've drafted that they really like on defense.
Right.
And you're short on some area, you do have to sort of factor that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm not saying wouldn't take. Well, so I think what it comes down to for him is if a center is available, they really need another center.
Oh, there'll be a ton of centers, but they're short at goalie organizationally too. I mean, they only have Nedeljkovic signed for 2 years. Keith Petruzzi is, I don't know how good he is anymore. I don't know if he's even on his radar anymore. So
they don't have a young goalie in the system.
No, so they still need that too, technically.
I don't know. I just don't have the feeling that they'll do that. I do think they've considered it. I think there's a chance they would look at Kosa at 22 if he was there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think McTavish, if he's available, if Columbus doesn't take him at 5.
Right.
Yeah, I'll tell you. All right, so we'll go first with Kosa. I watched him, but again, we're watching a guy in the bubble. So I defaulted to Brad Allen, who had seen him before, and he likes Kosa better than Wallstedt. But he's the only person I know that does. But he is very into goalies. He's on Hockey Prospect Radio, and so I do. I look at that opinion and I take it heavily. But again, we have to look at Kosa and say, this guy played in a bubble last year. Like, he didn't even face all the teams. He didn't even face a lot of normally what he would face. Does he look good? Sure. But as a 6'6" goalie, I think the one thing we've learned about those guys is that's going to take some time. Those guys don't rush into the league.
For sure. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Is there any way that Wallstedt falls to 22, Russ?
No way he falls to 22. I can't see him falling past 15.
Right.
And because there's just too many teams that need goalies in their systems, somebody is going to jump at it. And same with Kosa. Like, I don't think I would take Kosa in the first round. That's just me after what I've seen. And I think he's a terrific goalie. I'm not the guy that likes to take goalies in the first round to begin with.
Right.
So I feel like they have to really show me something. The one edge Wallstedt has over Kosa is he's playing against better competition now. The SHL is a lot better than the WHL in a bubble. Like, there's not even a question about that. Nobody will argue that.
That's interesting. Russ brought that up because I should bring it because it was really fascinating. Shang Peng, who covers the San Jose Sharks for a different organization, was previously with Hockey Buzz.
Absolutely.
He got one of those. I forget what the word for it. Something scientist. But anyway, he's a numbers guy, and they did a study on what is it? Analytics scientist. That's correct. That's what it was. And he crunched the numbers looking at whether it's true that it's risky business to take a goalie in the first round, and in particular in the top 10 picks. And he went through the history of the draft, crunched all the numbers, and within the margin of error, it's relatively the same. Yeah. And in terms of success rates, now they had to define, success rates, and that,
how many games did they
play? A little bit arbitrary, but but they only took retired players, although it would have been even favorable if you get to count Carey Price and Fleury.
Right.
Yeah.
They didn't include those two.
Yeah.
But it was relatively the same. It's like a 60% rate of success for both goalies and defensemen and forwards.
I kind of wonder
Wow.
if I did it, and of course I would ask this guy to do it because I'm not a numbers guy. I would only want it done in the last 10 years, honestly, because I think the whole game has changed. The goalie game has changed too.
And maybe a number of these teams are following those analytic calculations, because Askarov went 11th overall last year. Wasn't a top 10 pick. He slid. There was some speculation he could go in the top 5 or top 10. And Spencer Knight went 13th. So, is it possible the Wallstat slips out of the top 10? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
possible. If you were following those analytics, you would be just as comfortable taking Wallstat or Askarov or Spencer Knight in the top 10 as you would not take it.
Right. I mean, if he falls to like 15, I think then it has to get interesting if Detroit can make a move up to get him. Like, I think
here's the interesting part. So, like when Kevin said McTavish, I don't disagree that he could go there. I also don't think he's superstar material. I don't know if anybody in this draft is superstar material, but I don't think he is. He's an extremely hard worker. He's great around the net. There's a lot of things he does. He checks a lot of boxes, but there's higher end guys in this draft. And it does seem like now we're getting back to an era where those hardworking guys, the bigger guys, the physical guys are now being valued higher than these skill finesse guys.
Yeah.
And it does seem like we're slipping back with that a little. And that's not to say he's going to be a bad pick. I think he's really good. I just feel like there's guys with higher end. Like, as an example, a polarizing guy is Fabian Lysell, who plays in the SHL. Terrific speed. I mean, he's probably the fastest guy in the draft. He's got a great shot. He looks terrific offensively. He didn't have great interviews, so like people are sort of talking about that. There's a murmur about that. So he'll probably drop, and I hear Carolina will take him, and Carolina will make something out of him because that's what Carolina does. They'll get a talented guy that drops.
He's not going to last that long.
I don't think he should, Kev, but I mean,
he won't.
This is what I'm hearing. But the idea is, when I start putting McTavish up against some of these other guys, he's the most well-rounded, but he's not the most talented.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, even with the NHL doing that Ryan O'Reilly, comp, which I don't like to do comps at all.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Ryan O'Reilly's really good. But again, Ryan O'Reilly is not Jack Eichel. You could find 7, 8, 10 players better than Ryan O'Reilly that you would draft ahead of Ryan O'Reilly even now. So, that's what I worry about when I see the McTavish thing shooting up the charts.
Yeah, he's
a safe pick though. That's a rock solid safe pick though, and sometimes teams want that too.
Well, I think you're right, Russ, in saying we're seeing this suddenly these physical guys like stay-at-home defensemen like we talked about before, or like just physical, and that's typically the NHL has been doing this forever. Like the concept is for a long time a puck moving defenseman. We need puck moving defensemen, and then all defensemen became puck moving defensemen, right? I mean, and now we're moving away.
Russ and I were talking about this a couple days ago to bring up on a show, was the fact that there seems to be a quota in the NHL in regards to small defensemen. Okay, Colorado can have Sam Girard, and he's 5'7" or whatever the heck.
He's 5'5" actually.
Yeah, 5'5". But they can't have another guy like that. Everybody else is close to 6 foot or big. It's
McCarr is the only outlier because he's 5'11". But we looked at all these other teams. Like, we started talking about it, and every team had one.
Right.
One
small guy.
One small defenseman. And so it does sort of tell us a little bit about where this league is at. And so, as an example, Simon Edvinsson, terrific defenseman. This guy can do it all. I think his skating can still be a little better. I do think he can be even more physical, but he's a really good puck mover. He's got a really good shot. He can play in all situations. I saw him take over a game. I think it was against Latvia. I mean, it's no offense to Latvia, but in the under 18s, but he still did it. And he really is impressive, right? So the idea is he going to get drafted? Like, I have him ranked 6th. Is he going to go in the top 5 now because he has the size, and now they're all hoping to, make him the next Victor Hedman or whatever guy. But again, we also have to remember people wanted to string up Tampa for 2.5 seasons because Victor Hedman didn't look good in the NHL.
Yep.
And I stuck behind him, and people did stick behind him, but there were a lot of fans that were not happy with Victor Hedman early on.
Well, we've had 4 Stanley Cups now. If you go back to Washington was tougher than Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
St. Louis was tougher than Boston. They're just bigger, tougher guys. In my opinion, I mean, both were tough, but I think that St. Louis's physicality was the difference in that series. People say, even though
Boston was beat up by the time
it was more, it was more Bennington, but and then Tampa gets eliminated by Columbus until they get tougher, and they get these. They add like this fourth line and this third, these tougher guys, the Kalorans and things like that, and now suddenly they win Stanley Cups because they're tougher too.
I don't think it's because
they were tougher and deeper.
They were deeper. It made them deeper. They definitely played a little harder for those lines. But like Mike and I were talking about this too. They had the best goalie in the world, best scorer in the world.
Yeah.
They had the most depth. They had one of the best farm systems.
But all that got eliminated. They had all that when they got eliminated by Columbus in 4 games.
I get it. Everybody gets stung once.
But that's how usually, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying there's a perception around the NHL that
I get it. And but what I'm basically trying to say is I still don't believe that it's going to be that one tough guy you get and that is going to make you a Stanley Cup winner. And look, I'll go back to the Rangers when they drafted Dylan McIlrath. The first thing I told people that day, and I say it to this day, is if you are drafting for toughness, you're making a mistake because that guy's not going to be there for 3 to 5 years. So where's the toughness going to show up now?
Yeah. Kevin, do you think that there's a perception, though, that you got to be tougher?
I don't call it toughness. I call it harder to play against. Like Coleman and Goodrow. I mean, I'm sure they're tough players, but that's not what makes them
right.
They're really hard to play against. They're
grittier. Is grittier a better word?
Pardon me?
Is grittier a better word?
Yeah. I mean, because I think what happens is toughness has the connotation of fighting for some people, and I think we need to try to eliminate that. They're just really, really hard to play against, hard-nosed, those kinds of players. And, I think it's all the above is why Tampa was so good. But the one element they seemed to be short of was, to being harder to play against. And then they added that. And that was kind of the final piece.
Yeah, Grittier is a better description except for mascots.
Right. I'll tell you the litmus test for this kind of player. Tyler Boucher is Brian Boucher's kid. He's a really good player. He's a big kid. He wants to be the next Tom Wilson. He hits first, asks questions later, but he can score goals. He can score in the crease. He has good hands. His skating's already good. It'll get better, and he will get stronger. So he's probably a player that should go somewhere in the 30s. If he goes somewhere in the 20s, then that will tell me that teams have slipped back to this way of thinking, and that's what they're looking for. And again, I'll use another example. We saw early in the year that the Flyers were sort of linked to Zachary Lahara, and I've seen him a little bit. I've watched him on video, of course, and then I even asked Shane Malloy, who's in that area and has seen the queue a lot, and said, "Yeah, there's a little Marchand in him." But again, if I'm drafting that guy, let's say 13th overall, now I have him ranked 23rd, but let's say he's a little better than that. And I'm drafting him hoping he's going to be the next Brad Marchand. I'm now going to wait 3 to 5 years to see if he's the next Brad Marchand. And I now passed on other higher talented players because I'm looking for this one thing. And I think that's a risky way to go. So I would say Flyers don't do it because you're going to have better players on the board.
This is why the comparison game is always dangerous. And
it is.
Going back to my area of expertise, which is the Leafs. Years ago, they drafted in the second round a tough winger named Brad Ross, and immediately Brad Ross he made the Team Canada World Junior team. He was immediately drawing comparisons to Wendell Clark. The difference is Wendell Clark was first overall in the NHL draft, and Brad Ross is a second rounder. He put up good stats. I think it was Portland in the WHL. He never really made it. And it's like, but everybody was hyped up because, oh my God, it's the next Wendell Clark. You can't do that to these kids. Let them just develop. Let them advance on their own at their own pace, and don't put that kind of pressure on them. And then maybe you're surprised. Maybe you have a player who's going to be something years down the road. But I think you damage a player when you heap all these expectations on them.
I always say this. Brad Marchand is the one guy that is that, and maybe Gallagher is a reasonable facsimile, but there's very few of these guys in the league.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't think it's the teams that do that as often.
No, it's not.
It's the media.
Yeah.
And we do it because, we're trying to convey to our readers, what this player is like. And it's not good enough to tell them, well, the guy's gritty or he's tough or he's whatever. And you're looking for something they understand. Well, they understand Brad Marchand.
Yeah.
So we use that. So we're the ones that have been guilty of, overhyping players. But I think for the most part, teams, shy away from comparisons. Because how many times have you had a GM say, well, we don't like comparisons, so I don't want to go.
Well, I mean, Paul Holmgren called Sam Morin. He said he reminds him of Chris Pronger.
Some do, but as a general rule.
I know.
Yeah.
But I do have to point out, he said he reminded him of Chris Pronger, and Sam Morin has never really made it. And I don't think that helped him at that opening press conference.
Elliot Friedman just posted a few minutes ago that the Flyers are one team pursuing Ristolainen from Buffalo. Like I said, I was at the media availability yesterday and talking to some reporters, and they said of the three, meaning Reinhart, Ristolainen, and Eichel, that the most likely deal to get done this weekend would be Ristolainen.
Yeah, and we've talked about this for a long time, right?
1 year at 5.4.
We've talked about this for a long time, and I mentioned it yesterday. The Flyers have been obsessed with him, and I'm not surprised. Like, they wanted to draft him. They tried last year, trade deadline to get him. They tried the year before at the draft to get him. They really want this kid. I would not be shocked at all if this got done.
Well, it makes a lot of sense in terms of the left-right balance for the Flyers, because then you would have a top pairing of Provorov and Ellis, and then Sanheim and Ristolainen on the second pairing. And Ristolainen is more, he's not a shutdown D, he's not a matchup D, but he's got size and toughness that he can probably adequately fill that role. But I would find it hard to believe that Russ, that the 13th pick in the first round wouldn't be part of this deal, because we know that the Sabres want a second first-round pick.
Right. So my thinking on this is he a good acquisition? Maybe. He is a good acquisition in the sense that he's talented and they need it.
Right.
It could be a bad acquisition if they lose him after his year and they gave up the 13th pick and one of their top prospects or a guy off the roster. Then it's not a good trade. And I honestly – the question I think Chuck Fletcher has to ask himself is if we get him, can we make it to the conference finals? And I look at that team and I say, yeah, your defense is better. You're hoping Carter Hart goes back to form. You still don't know where the offense is really coming from on this team, especially if you trade Voracek. Let's say you do the Voracek Tarasenko thing or whatever.
Kevin,
I think there's just too many ifs to say they're going to get to the conference final. And so I can't give up a great player besides that first. I'll give you the first, but if that next player is a real good player, that's too much.
Kevin Weeks is reporting Robert Hagg and 2 draft picks for Ristolainen.
Well, it depends what the 2 draft picks are. Robert Hagg is fine.
Yeah. Let me see what
if it's Hagg and that first and something else, it's too much.
Right.
Well, let's see. Philadelphia, they've already traded their Philadelphia traded their second, which was in 2022 in the Gostisbehere deal. So they have their second this year. I would find it hard to believe it would be 2 picks and one of them would be the first. I'd probably think it would be a second and something.
Right. If it's a second and something, it's okay. But again, they're now getting into the ballpark of they're starting to give up a lot of picks, and they're going to have to be successful. If they're not successful, it's going to cost them. But if it's 2 not that big of picks, it's fine. Because, Hagg's only got a year left, too.
Yeah. I think, it really does depend where those picks are. But that would be, Carter Hart's going to be happy about Ellis and Ristolainen and being added to that defense. I mean, there's no question that this helps the Flyers a lot. A lot of the issues Carter Hart had last year. Yeah, people were really ripping on Carter Hart last year, and it really was not all that much his fault in the reality.
What's the salary there, Mike? Because now they're at net zero again for salary, and they're going to have to get rid of Voracek now to sign the RFAs.
Yeah, Ristolainen is 5'4". Hagg was at 1.6.
You got rid of Gostisbehere, so
right. So now, but they're at net zero. They just
net zero again. Yeah, you get back to where he is.
So, and they still have to sign their RFAs. Like, this is...
Well, okay, Russ, maybe it's too far afield to say they have to get rid of Voracek. It might be easier to say they can get rid of JVR. And I've always said JVR to New Jersey because he's from New Jersey, would make sense because they definitely need scoring wingers to play with, guys like
I don't know if New Jersey would want him.
I mean, he can still score though.
Yeah, but again, the scoring's fleeting. It's like he'll score 10 goals in 2 weeks. He did carry the Flyers for a little bit of time last year, which was the first time he did it since he's been back. But again, where was JVR at the end of the season when they needed him?
Yeah, no, agreed. JVR is New Jersey has always been rumored, but New Jersey would do it, I'm sure, but I don't know. New Jersey is definitely trying to make moves and not getting anywhere with it. Right now, like they want to add some players. They have added some players, but so Elliot Friedman's now confirming.
Dreger's saying a first is involved. If they gave up a first in this deal, it's too much.
With Haig, yeah, I mean that's a lot.
It's too much.
Yeah, I mean they must not like this draft
unless they are automatically signing Ristolainen into a deal. If they automatically sign Ristolainen into a deal, I can live with it. If he is hanging out there and he's got 1 year left,
I would venture to say, knowing Fletcher a little bit, that they don't do this unless they have signed him to a deal or unless they know they can.
Kevin, this is where I've always been puzzled about Ristolainen and his reputation around the league, because I've seen this guy play for a number of years. He's big, he's mobile, he's got a good shot. He's right-handed in a league where a lot of right-handed. They're not a great deal of quality right-handed defensemen. But analytically, he's just always been ripped to shreds. And I don't get it, because I think he's been victimized because he's had to play so many minutes for such a bad team that's hurt his numbers. And I think he's a better defenseman than people really give him credit for.
Well, that's why there's really mixed reviews on him. Earlier this year, I asked two separate general managers if they were in on Ristolainen and said, no, we're just really not interested.
Yeah.
And I said, well, why not? And they said, well, we just don't feel he's invested. One of them, like he's got size and he's got a lot of ability, but they don't feel like he has, demonstrated that he can get everything out of his talent. So, they just thought they had better options elsewhere. So
he's also, to be fair on him, he's been in a weird situation. Like that's the other thing that people will say. He's that defenseman, the big defenseman, like we talked about before, take longer to develop. So I think that, he's a gamble, but he might be a gamble worth taking. Although when you look at the end of the day, this basically turns out to be Gostisbehere, a first, a second, and whatever else is involved here for Ristolainen. So this is really.
It's a game of Jenga, Eck. I mean, there's a point where this is not worth it.
They really have given up a lot to get Ristolainen if this is the case. Because
John Shannon is reporting that the deal does include the 13th pick.
All right, there you go. That's a lot.
It's a lot, man.
The 13th pick and Hag, and if the other report is correct, then it's another probably 5th, 6th round pick, something like that.
I will give the Flyers a little bit of credit here for reading the room. They had to do something this offseason. They couldn't sit back and be patient. They really.
Yeah, but okay. There's a fact for that.
You know what I'm saying, right? You were in that building. That building has lost it.
Okay, I don't think bringing Ristolainen is going to bring in fans, though. Maybe Ryan Ellis brings in a few. I don't think either of them brings in a lot more fans. Maybe the actions do, but again, I also think Flyers fans are smart enough to realize there's a lot of mortgage into the future going on here, and because their system isn't as strong as it used to be. They
are, Ruts, but they also have so many prospects still. They're still banking on all these prospects, and to them, they're not giving. They haven't given up Frost. They haven't given up Konechny. They haven't given up Farabee yet. That those three guys are still there, and the fact and they need to win now. In that they need to win now. That's just where they are. I think they're in a win, and this is Comcast telling Fletcher that we need to win now, because this is not actually Fletcher's MO to be this aggressive. So it's interesting.
I think it's overly aggressive.
Just David Pagnotta also reporting that the Bruins may be making a move with the Coyotes.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, Connor Garland or Dvorak. If I had to gamble, I would say it would be Dvorak, because there's cost certainty there. Because he's at $4.55 million for 3 or 4 years. But again, I'm surprised. Who's going to be left in Arizona?
Why can't this be Ekman Larson, who we know wants to go to Boston?
Because he's 8.25.
Yeah, I know that. But at the same time, we know that that's where he wants to play. So to me, that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Well, I mean, maybe it's a bigger deal. That's possible. But I mean, then who the heck?
What deal?
Sorry, go ahead.
What is Pagnotta reporting?
He says
Pagnotta, what is he reporting?
He says Coyotes are the team to watch today. They have multiple irons in the fire beyond ongoing talks with Boston. Forwards like Garland and Dvorak could have new teams soon enough if Arizona can wrap things up. So he's saying that they're talking with Boston about one of Garland and Dvorak. I've heard Garland in connection with the Leafs as a Zach Hyman replacement. So, but I'm sure there's about 10 teams interested in Connor Garland based on how he played last year.
Yeah, I heard Lou was in on him too. So
yeah.
So if they trade Connor Garland,
heck. This is what I'm saying. Okay, we've heard they're trading or they're interested in trading Kessel. They're interested in trading Kemper. They're trading Ekman Larson. Whoever the last person is in the building, turn the light off.
No, I mean that's what I'm saying. This is like I could get Kessel. I can Kemper. I can get Kemper. But I don't know.
I'll also tell you this, Ek. You better go far in the playoffs because picking 46th in this draft isn't the greatest place to start your draft.
No, for sure, no question. I mean, they do have a ton of draft picks coming up next year, right, or even later.
Yeah, but this year, I mean, again, they're starting to trade away picks to get rid of problems, and so when we start to look at them,
also acquiring picks by acquiring problems, though, too.
Yeah, they haven't acquired.
They've done that a couple times already, right? So, yeah, I mean, this is, oh man, so 13th. This is a 13th. This year and a second next year in the Flyers deal.
Wow.
The 13th overall this year, the second round draft pick next year. They must have him signed.
If they don't, it's a bad deal.
Well, okay. I heard. Well, there's no way that the Sabres are getting a first for Ristolainen. They got more. If that's correct. Holy moly.
Yeah, this is a Kevin Adams. This is a big move for Kevin Adams. Honestly, this is a really.
This is a big positive for Kevin Adams. There's no downside for him.
This is a win. This is a win for him.
Yeah. This is a win.
This is a big win because
this is what teams like this need to do: take advantage of teams that are like in established markets, but have to reinvigorate their.
How about this? Use the word desperate. We have to use.
Yeah, they're desperate. There's no two ways about it.
But okay. Just like, and I'm making a comparison here. Joe Sakic was excoriated for months and months on end until he made the deal for Matt Duchene, and then all of a sudden he looked like he was a brilliant general manager. Kevin Adams has been ripped to shreds in Buffalo and around the league for the Taylor Hall signing, for not getting enough for Taylor Hall in the trade, for the Montour deal, for Derek Stahl, all these things. This deal sets him up in the sense that I'm not taking anything less than absolutely what I want for Jack Eichel. And if you don't offer to me, I'm not trading them to you. This helps out Adams in the Eichel deal, I think, because he got what he wanted. He got probably more than he wanted from a team like Philadelphia for Ristolainen.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, this makes me wonder if, at some point, this number 13 pick was discussed and the Flyers were talking about Eichel with Buffalo, because that often happens too. That they have discussions and the 13th pick is up there. And then they say, they go back because we know the Eichel discussions with the Flyers broke off. But hey, once you've already talked about the 13th pick with the team, it's a little bit easier to let it go.
Yeah, it's a second in 2023.
2023. Okay.
So they just keep pushing it down the road. They keep pushing. Because they traded next year's second, so they have to trade this.
Yeah.
So, we just don't have a second round pick till 2024. Okay.
This is the team that is just like you said, Wrestler. This is a desperate team.
It's a desperate team like that. It is now at the point where yes, they are desperate, and I will say it this way: if any Flyers fan tells me that they feel like they were going to use that 13th overall pick for just a guy with Ristolainen's talent, they all would say, no, we expected something bigger.
And there's no indication that the Sabres retained any salary on Ristolainen. So I mean, not as of yet.
I mean, Ristolainen's talent is still up for debate, right? That's what we have to. That's the question.
Well, no, but my point is the perception of that first overall pick, and even when Chuck was talking about it, he said yes, he would do it if it's a really good player and a really good trade. And I think Ristolainen's a good player. But like you said, there's still question marks about it.
I don't think there are question marks. That's what I was just talking to Kevin about. I mean, yeah, in the minds of some general managers, yes. But after watching this guy for a number of years, I think he's been ill-served by playing for the Sabres and playing.
I think that's fair too. I do.
I think he's a better defenseman than people think. If he plays second pairing, with Sanheim, Philadelphia fans will be happy with those top two pairs.
Yeah, that's a huge improvement over their last top two pairs.
It's a huge improvement, but think about the picks they have given up now in the Ghost deal and in this deal.
And even the Ellis, when you think about what they've done to improve their defense, what they've given up for Ellis and Ristolainen, it's an enormous amount of. They've given up three defensemen. A lot of youth. They gave up three of their six defensemen to get two better ones.
Right.
Essentially.
I think what the interesting thing is here is that I think Fletcher's getting away with saying that, well, we're getting players now that, we're going to win now and all that stuff. And I don't, and he keeps saying in these press conferences that, there's plenty of youth, plenty of talent, plenty of this. I see the cupboard starting to, getting a little thin.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely have to look at it that way. What time is it now? We are 2:06.
We're an hour, so we're good to go.
Yeah. All right. We will later. We're going to be back tonight. What time are we going, Mike? Tonight? 9.
9. Or if you want to go 8:30, 8:30 is fine.
Yeah, somewhere around 8:39. I guess.
Stay tuned to Hockey. We'll post it.
We'll post it as it goes on. But and we'll be talking more. Basically, you can also listen to Russ this afternoon or tonight.
7 to 8 on Sirius.
7 to 8 on Sirius XM.
1 second.
And we'll be talking rumors as well. I'll be getting into the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which are the dominoes of the two interesting dominoes, and this is something to think about for later. But you have at the top you have this Eichel, Seth Jones thing, and then below that you have Landeskog and Hamilton. And it's interesting how you have two levels of different dominoes at work at the same time. That they're 4 pretty significant players, but two that are definitely on one level in Eichel and Jones. That's a higher level than we ever see, right? Usually at this time of year, and then the already high level in Landeskog and Hamilton. So interesting stuff. We'll talk to you guys later. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tonight.